So are our schools unfair to girls? And if they are unfair, what should we do about it? We're joined by three people who know a lot about education. Elizabeth Parr-Johnston is the president of Mount St. Vincent University. That's the only university in Canada that has as its focus the education of women. Fiona Nelson has been a teacher at elementary, secondary, and college levels. She's a trustee with the Toronto Board of Education. And Jim Gaskell is an associate professor in the Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia. He's one of the authors of a new study that looks at why girls choose not to go on in maths and sciences. Dr. Parr-Johnston, what's the problem here? Why would girls tend to learn some things better in an environment that's predominantly female than they would in an environment that's mixed?
Because in a mixed environment still today, we do things in our teaching styles, in our curriculum, in our pedagogy, that really says to girls, you're not full equivalents here. You're not full partners. In some sense, you're a second-class citizen.
We say what, for example?
Well, in part, it's teaching style, I guess. We tend to call on boys more often. We tend to give boys more complete answers. And we have research that shows this, but also there are subtle messages that girls shouldn't study math, shouldn't study science because they, quote, aren't good at it.
Well, I was getting, Jim Gaskell, from the tape, the impression that it wasn't just the teachers. In fact, it wasn't mostly the teachers sending those signals. This is kid culture telling girls that they ought to shut up, sit down, and be well-behaved and pretty and not bother the boys.
I wouldn't just say it's kid culture, it's a lot of male culture. And it's not just, there's a diversity amongst males, it's some males. And I think you saw it in the tape there where the teachers just said, well, it's being a teenage boy. Well, I'd like to say that there's nothing generic about being a teenage boy. We don't have to take that as a given. We need to take that on, I think, and say, why are we allowing teenage boys to do this kind of intimidation? Saw the girls being uncomfortable in that class, and so they're moving out. I think that's useful to move out, but it's also, I think, important to say why are they moving out and to address those issues within the classes themselves.
Yeah, none of this is particularly new. Research has been turning this up, I guess, for some time. Toronto Board of Education has probably been fussing about it for some time. Why, then, is the classroom still, I assume even in the Toronto Board, tending to operate against the learning, the way women learn?
Well, I think there are two things here. If you're going to attack this problem, you need to do a lot of retraining of the teachers, just as you do in anti-racism and various other things that you're trying to alter in the social setting. But waiting till girls are in their teens, to me, is a total disaster. That self-esteem, their attitude toward themselves, this business of prettying up for boys, and that sort of thing, that starts very, very young. It's the impact of advertising, the conditioning at home, and all that sort of thing. It's in the primary grades, I think, we should be working on this stuff.
So the girls show up at the age of 6 in grade 1, and they're already conditioned to be sweet things and not to be assertive. I guess the problem then is, what do you do about that? And you say what you do about that is to pull them out and teach them separately in some ways.
Well, at the Mount, we do have a predominantly female environment. And we do find that women who are not, quote, assertive, if you will, or come in feeling that they cannot develop to their full potential or that they face barriers that are perceived not real, get into that environment and they blossom.
So what do you think of the principle of all-girl physics classes? Is that a good principle or a bad one?
I don't think it's necessarily good or bad in general. I think in a particular circumstance that was useful if those students felt more comfortable in it. I think in the long run it's not the answer because it doesn't deal with the very fundamental problem of the gender relationships in the classroom, which are mixed. And we need to take on those boys' attitudes, and we need to give girls confidence in those mixed classes.
Well, I'm going to go even farther. As far as I'm concerned, any kind of segregation is bad. And that's not the way you deal with the problem. You look at what is needed to be done, and you do it, but you do it in the setting in which the child is going to grow and live eventually. As far as I'm concerned, one of the most important things, having taught little ones in kindergarten, having taught at the junior high, science, by the way, and taught adults, one of the most vital things I think that we need to teach girls is how to speak properly, how to use their diaphragm, how to project, how to make themselves sound confident. Girls' voices go up at the end, and that's a sign of sort of, not being very confident. Boys tend to speak much more positively.
But maybe you can teach them to speak better by withdrawing them from the pressure of the big stage and letting them rehearse for a while.
I think what they need in a school is confidence that they do speak out, they'll be listened to, that there will be support.
Yeah.
And
That the reality of their lives will be valued and valued equally with men. But I think what we're saying is that if we could change the school overnight, this would be wonderful. But we're not there. We're far away from there. And what do you do with women who are older, who would like a university education, or maybe haven't finished high school? You can't simply abandon them. So you do need a very special environment that is not protective. It's nothing second class about it. But it's a first-class education which says not only can you succeed, you're expected to succeed.
Well, the trouble is that as soon as you have a separate classroom, people tend to look on it as different, as lesser. I think if you looked at the classroom...
As lesser?
Yes.
The girls in that physics class in Calgary certainly didn't look at it as lesser, and
Well,
neither did the
but
teacher.
no, I think if you looked at that physics class, and we have some research actually on that physics class, the boys tend to put it down as saying, these girls can't meet the competition.
Who
Some
cares?
of the girls...
Who cares?
We do know.
Perception is everything.
Yes, it's
But
very
we
important.
also know that more girls go on who've been in science and math from girls' schools than from co-ed schools.
Look, I
so
got
the
a nine-
evidence is there.
I've got a 9-year-old daughter who's smart as a whip. And the research that I've been reading, preparing to talk to you, tells me that this kid is going to run into a kind of a wall between the ages of 11 and 15. You're saying, let's leave her in the school and work with that and try to work through the problems, although it may take a long time. And you're saying, pull her out and let her blossom on her own. Now, as a parent, what am I supposed to do?
I think it depends on your daughter in part.
Yeah, it depends on you. I think you take up these issues with your school. I mean, I think if there are incidents in the class that she feels uncomfortable with, you take that up with the teacher. I think, and within the context of school, you try to raise that as an issue in the school, to make gender an issue in the school, because it's not an issue in the school at the moment.
Well, you know, the other thing is, when you buy her presents, do you buy her outfits for a Barbie doll, or do you buy her a chemistry set?
I buy her what she wants for that reason.
Yeah, right. But I mean,
what is
there's
that?
also shaping of that opinion that can go on. You know, I think there are an enormous number of ways that we can make the suggestion to girls. You say she's smart as a whip. I hope you say that to her a lot.
Don't worry.
No, but it's that kind of thing that is so vital.
Okay, but now listen. I don't want to make this a guidance session, but I also have boys. Now, what happens to the boys if the girls get pulled out of the physics class and we're left with kind of a locker room approach to physics, and then they wind up in university and in the business
You're
world?
assuming it's either or, and we're not saying that.
Well,
I
wait a
think
minute,
you'd need
aren't we?
both models. Yes, because you saw in that example, some girls in the high school elected to be in a co-ed class, and others elected to be in a girls-only class.
But Fiona Nelson would not allow them that choice, I don't think.
Well, I wouldn't be quite as draconian as that. I certainly would advise strongly against it. I think you work on the teachers and their attitudes. If the teachers are constantly calling on the boys for answers, you work on in-service to make sure that they're sensitive to that fact.
What do you say to that?
I say we do that, but I say it takes time. We can't put all the teachers through in-service until the time your daughter is going through high school, unfortunately.
I think you can raise it with the kids as well. I think you need programs in the schools so that the band teacher says, hey, we can't have all the boys doing the tubas and we can't have all the girls doing the flutes. We're going to have something different here. And you don't just leave it to chance. You just don't leave it to kids' interests, because as seen in that class, you can shape kids' interests. You can get girls involved in doing the tubas and doing the drums. Take that on in a mixed school.
Everybody here, I guess, knows the research a lot better than I do. Do you have numbers that indicate to you that in hard, cold accomplishment later, after school, separate education in, say,
Yes.
science for girls pays off?
Yes, we do.
That's very difficult because there's a whole class phenomena in terms of who goes to private schools, and it's a very messy issue. So I think it would be very difficult to say for sure one way or the other.
Oh, but we do have some data, some more recent data that has been corrected for economic status and so forth. It again shows that a majority, or at least disproportionately large number of girls who go through predominantly female educational systems do better.
You went through an all-female
I did.
educational system. You sent your daughter to one, too.
Yes.
What's it
I
like?
didn't send her. I have to correct that. She's
Okay.
curious.
All right. All right. You validated her going.
Yes.
What was it like?
Well, I firmly believe that when I got to graduate school, which was co-ed, I never would have survived if I hadn't had the university environment, the college environment.
You
that
wouldn't
I've
have
had.
survived. Why not?
Well, because I think I was ignored. I was expected not to succeed at first. And I knew that I had every right to be there, that I was every bit as bright and every bit as capable. But I might not have known that.
Here we have the president of a university who says that there's her talent was liberated by her experience in an all-female school. Well, if that's so, doesn't it mean there is an awful lot of other female potential talent that will go to waste unless we try this kind of experiment?
It may well be. My experience is entirely the opposite. I've been in co-ed public education all my life. I can truly say I have never had an experience of someone treating me in a sexist way. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact I wasn't brought up to be a girl. My mother was remarkably good about this. I mean, you did what you were talented at, or what was your turn to do, whatever. And as a result, it never occurred to me that anything I wanted to do was something that was not a girl's thing to do.
Are you
never
the norm?
occurred to me.
Are you the norm?
No,
I
but
so.
I don't think that's the point. The point is that there are enormous variables here of personality, of culture, of class, any number of things. But I am not at all persuaded that segregating people is the way to solve it. I think that most teachers are well-intentioned and want all their children to do well. And if you do intensive in service with them, it doesn't have to be long just to raise their awareness of what they're doing. You need only videotape a teacher for an hour in the classroom for that teacher to be able to spot the things they're doing that need rectification.
I was talking to a teacher yesterday, actually, and she was very aware of these kinds of issues, and yet she found it extraordinarily difficult to monitor her own performance in her class. I mean, even people who are aware of this find it difficult to do. Doesn't mean we can't change, but it is an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. I want to take on one other thing as well, and that is, it's not just the way you're brought up, because that's clearly important, and to have supportive parents. But the girls I talk to, some of the girls I talk to, I mean, they do experience this kind of stuff. They get called airhead. And they say, when we explore with them, what does that mean? They say, well, you get used to it. Well, I think it's a shame that girls have to get used to being called airhead when they make a good comment.
But surely there are standards of courtesy in a classroom that a teacher has a responsibility to enforce.
But there's that notion of boys will be boys, and so that the standards are different for boys and girls.
I'd like us not to forget also the other learners out there that aren't in grade school and high school. We still have to deal with those people who have not been able to develop to full potential.
Thank you all. We'll be back right after this.
You're looking at one Canadian. Like 12 million other Canadians, she works for a living. Like 500,000, she studies part-time. And like 7 million, she's raising a family. To some, she may seem like any other Canadian. But to Royal Bank, she's an individual who receives her personal bank statements in Braille. True, we have 8 million other customers, but we got to be Canada's largest bank, one customer at a time.
Your Nissan dealer brings you the biggest sale in the universe, to the best of our knowledge. The all-new 150 horsepower fully appointed Altima is now just $15,995. The luxury sports sedan Maxima with V6 power is now just $22,495. And on these and most other Nissans, special 5.8% financing over 48 months is available too. It's the biggest sale in the universe, on now at your Nissan dealer. Hurry, before the rest of the universe beats you to it.
Romeo.
From the Stratford Festival,
Wherefore art thou, Romeo?
Megan Porter follows, and Anthony Cimolino in Shakespeare's tale of ill-fated love, the Norman Campbell production of Romeo and Juliet, Sunday at 8.
And now here's a quick final look at tonight's top news stories. Revenue Canada says it has uncovered a series of tax scams. It says tax consultants in the Toronto area filed $60 million worth of false claims. There was a big rally tonight outside the Manitoba legislature. About 5,000 people were protesting cutbacks in government services. And Quebec Premier Robert Bourassa returned to the National Assembly today. Bourassa is being treated for skin cancer, and he hasn't been in the legislature since last December.
Interested in what you thought of our special report on educating girls or on anything else on the program, drop us a line or give us a call or a fax. Usually we have time to tell you how to do that, but tonight we don't.
But it raises some very interesting questions about schools these days.
That's Primetime News Tonight. I'm Bill Cameron.
And I'm Pamela Wallen. We'll see you again tomorrow.
My house burned down. I don't even own a pair of pants.
on the season finale of North of 60.
I didn't start no fire.
A deadly blaze, and everything points to one suspect. North of 60, Thursday at 8.
This is CBC Public Broadcasting.
This is CBC North.